So we're doing Judges 15 through 17 today. And in Judges 15, I highlighted verse 2. And I said, this is why you need to talk to people about things before making assumptions. Because this is where Samson's father-in-law assumed that he hated his daughter, or his wife, and he did not want her anymore, so he gave her away. And so I wrote that we need to talk about it before we actually start making assumptions. And his wife is actually mentioned in Judges 14, so if you see me in the blue, I'm highlighting his wife every time he's mentioned his wife, because I wrote down that she's mentioned in the 14, so you get to learn a little bit more about her in chapter 14. And the next thing I highlighted was verse 8, and I said that Samson has a bit of an anger issue, and when I wrote that down, it made me think of Peter, because Peter did have a bit of an anger issue too. And so I said, like them, it shows you that God can really use anyone for his purpose, and so you're not limited to not do anything based on like what you've done or character flaws that you may have, or anything really that you think may be limiting you, because he can use you no matter what. And we need to remember that sometimes, because sometimes we like to convince ourselves that we actually can't be used when that is not true. Okay, so you're basically going to see me write all this down. The point of my study with me's are very casual videos, like they're not like super produced, because they're the ones that I can make really easily, and I try to put up weekly. So these are for the people who are better at listening to things, so not really watching the video and just listening to it. And then they're also for people who don't really like audio and just like video. So I try to do both for both people. So we're almost done with chapter 15. We basically went through everything. It basically sums up how Samson serves as a judge for his first little bit. And now we are going to chapter 16. Woohoo! So for 16, I mostly just talked about Delilah and then a few things on the back. I say this in every single video I make almost, but I'm studying the women of the Bible. So this was a chapter that mentioned a woman, so I was really excited, because I was in Leviticus and there were like none, and then Numbers there were like a few, and then in Joshua there was a few. But there's been a really lack of them, because we were in the law area, and that doesn't have a lot of characters. So I wrote down Delilah's name, and then I wrote a few facts about her. That's my outline for most of the women in focus things. I write down where they're from, like if they have any children, if they have a husband, who their family is really, and then I write down little things that the scripture mentions about them that we probably should pay attention to, because the details are really important. So Delilah is from the Valley of Sorek. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And in the story of Samson and Delilah, you can tell that she's not very loyal to Samson, because she is constantly trying to figure out what his secret is and how to get it to her other people. Because they do not like him, and he's so powerful, and he is a threat to them. So she wasn't very loyal, because she's constantly trying to like out his secret so that others can take him. And it's just like, so she tried every single lie Samson told her, and I wrote down that she's a reminder that it matters who you date or marry, because you don't want to get into a relationship and then figure out you're dating Delilah. So it's very important that you learn about who you're potentially thinking about dating, and it is something that we talk about, but we don't really talk about a lot anymore. I used to hear it preached like all the time that it matters who you date and marry, but I never really hear it as much anymore. So you should really know who you're getting into a relationship with, because sometimes they can seem like a Mary and then end up like a Delilah, or they can seem like I can't even think of a guy character that is, you know what I mean. So, they could seem like a Paul and turn out to be a Laban. That's a good one, because Laban was very crafty. So it really matters who you date, because you don't want to be stuck with a Delilah or a Laban. So that's what I wrote, and that's about all I have for that first page. And so I move on to the second page, and I'm sorry, I didn't tell you about the verses. So Delilah is mentioned in verses 4 through 6. She's basically mentioned all throughout 16, but I just highlighted that portion for her. And so I highlighted verse 16 just because I think it's funny how it's phrased. It says, "So his soul was vexed to death," and that's because she wouldn't stop bothering him until he told her his secret. I just thought it was funny. And then in verse 17, he talks about how he's been a Nazarite unto God from when before he was even born. And that vow is mentioned in number 6, 1 through 26, and it gives more information about it. So, like, you can read Judges and read through Samson without really knowing what the vow consists of, because it is mentioned, but it's not mentioned in depth. Like, you don't get all of the little details and all the little rules that they need to follow. So, like, if you want to do more study in it, in chapter 17, that's when Samson's mother is mentioned. And so that goes into a little bit of the vow. Like, it says that she can't drink anything strong drink, or she can't touch any unclean thing. But Numbers 6 gives you way more knowledge about that vow. So if that's something that you thought about looking into, I would highly suggest it. And then in verse 18, it said, "And when Delilah saw that he told her all his heart," and that just made me think about how, like, people can really tell when you're being genuine. And so if you're just doing something for gain, or just because you have to, people can tell when you do that. And so I made the point of how you should not forget this, because whenever you start ministering or witnessing to someone, because they can tell when your heart is really in it, and then they can also tell when it's something that, like, your pastor suggested you do but you didn't really want to do, or your parents suggested you do and you don't really want to do it. So be aware that it's very obvious whenever you're doing something because you want to do it, and it's just something, and not even that, it's also obvious when you're being truthful. So, like, he wasn't telling her the truth, and obviously he was lying. So people can tell, well, not all the time, but most of the times, like, when it's something very important, people can tell whenever you're being honest or whenever you're doing it because you want to. And so you really need to keep that in mind whenever you're going to witness to someone or minister to them in some way, because you don't want to push them away because you didn't want to do it, but your pastor wanted you to do it, and so you do it, and then you kind of ruin the connection that you already had. And then in verse 23, it talks of the Philistines are talking about how Dagon or Dagon, I can never remember which one it is, that's their god, their idol. They said that it's because of him that Samson was delivered into their hand, and then I wrote down that's what they thought, but really it was Samson's own fault that they were delivered into into their hands, because he told his secret, and he let Delilah just vex him to death, and the man just told her his secret. And so they took it as our God delivered Samson unto us, and really that's not how it was at all. It was actually Samson himself that did it because of his misjudgment. So that is all I have for 16. So we move on to chapter 17, and I got interrupted about halfway through chapter 17, so I don't have as much video for it, so I'm going to do my best to summarize it for you. So I'm really sorry if you're one of those people who don't listen with audio. So it starts off with what seems like Micah admitting that he stole money from his mother, and then when he returns it, his mother basically says that she's gonna make a graven image, but she's dedicating it unto the Lord, which we all know is wrong, because that's what the Israelites did very early on. They made a calf that was supposed to be a representation of God, but we all know that God doesn't like that. So I don't know where her thought process was, but that's when I start doing like I said earlier, I study the Women of Bible this year, so this is my Woman in Focus, and so it's Micah's mother, and she's from the Mount Ephraim, or Ephraim, whichever one, because I switch the I and the A all the time, and I cannot pronounce it correctly. Obviously, she was the mother of Micah. And like I said, like, I don't know if you could tell earlier, but she encouraged her son in his many times of breaking God's law. Like, many times. Like, throughout this, there are multiple things that he broke in this. So, she basically okays the making of an idol. And then, okay, so I'm at the end of this video, so I'm going to make a video of myself. So, like I said, I was interrupted, and so I look really weird, and I'm sorry, you're trying to see me talk for a little bit. I guess I could hold up my Bible, if that makes you feel a little better. So here's my Bible. So I can't do this. So in chapter 17, like I said, his mother was encouraging him to make an idol, basically. And then he goes and he hires a Levite to be a priest, and which is a big other no-no. Like, you don't do that. And so it was also a no-no from the priest. The priest, he shouldn't have done that. So he hires the Levite to be his priest, and this is basically the summary of chapter 17. It's really short. It's only 13 verses. So it's just crazy because later on, not in 17, but in like 18, I think, or maybe 19, we figure out that he's up going to be a priest for the tribe of Dan. So I think the exact line they tell him is, why would you want to be a priest? Well, not the exact line, but paraphrasing. They say, basically, why would you want to be a priest for one when you can be a priest for the whole people of Dan? And I am trying to find it right here. Oh, yeah. Wait, no, that's not it. Okay. It's in verse 19, and it says, Is it better for thee to be a priest unto a house of one man, or a priest unto a tribe and a family of Israel? So that's what I'm saying. He basically leaves Micah to be a priest for the whole tribe of Dan, and like, he didn't even really have faith in Micah or anything, and he wasn't really, I don't know. I just thought it was crazy. This whole story is crazy. So basically, that's the sum of 17. 17 was a really short chapter. Yeah, so don't be like Micah's mother, because you don't want to encourage your son to break the law of the Lord. And then don't be like Delilah, because you don't want to use your husband or boyfriend or whoever you have, or your wife or your girlfriend. I always direct things at girls because my followers are like 9% male, and that sounds like a lot, but it's really not. So most of the time, I don't actually have a male audience. So like I said, don't be like Delilah and give out all your secrets to people who want to hurt your husband or boyfriend or wife or girlfriend. And don't be like Micah's mother and encourage your kids to do really bad things. So I just recorded this entire story, and then I realized that I didn't actually press play. So I tend to want to record things outside because I don't like doing it inside because I feel like I'm bothering people, or I just don't like talking in front of people. So I was trying to go outside to do the voiceover because I record first and then I add my voice in later. When I was walking outside, I didn't look down first. Right beside the door, and no way to avoid it, was a snake. And I don't realize this. I stepped right on it. I'm pretty sure I stepped on its head. I'm 90% sure I stepped on the snake's head. I don't know how it's still alive. I step on the snake's head, and I freeze, but the snake freezes too, and it doesn't bite me at all. And so I'm just like, okay, this is weird. So I've only ever seen snakes one other time, like in person, that wasn't in a cage or a glass container where it could not hurt me, and I was freaked out about it. And I wasn't really scared of snakes before, but now I'm pretty sure I'm developing a fear of snakes. So I step on it, it doesn't do anything to me, and then I'm kind of freaking out, and so I shut the door, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, my dog is outside, and I don't know if the snake is like venomous or not, so I don't want to leave my poor baby outside. And so I'm trying to get my dog to get inside without letting the snake inside. And I get her attention, but she's trying to attack the snake. This little chihuahua is trying to take on the snake. And I'm just like, dude, I never realized how aggressive you were with little insects and reptiles and amphibians. Like, I didn't realize. And so she's trying to attack the snake. And I'm like, you can't, you're small, you can't do that. And so I try to get her in, and she finally comes in, but when she comes in, she like runs right across the snake and then just knocks it inside. And I'm freaking out at this point because like I don't know what the snake is. It could like want to eat me, and I don't know. I haven't had much experience with snakes. And so she knocks it inside, and then I try to slam the door before it gets in. And so it's like caught in the door, and it's half in and half out. And there's no way I'm gonna do anything to make that snake go outside, because I'm not going near the snake. So I make sure I'm not the only one in the house. I call Harrison. Harrison comes over, and he can't find the snake. And so we assume that the snake just left because the door was not actually closed, and there was a big enough gap for the snake to get out. And I freak out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, there was a snake. I don't want to go back outside. So I'm outside today because I'm a little less scared of snakes, and I'm pretty sure that one was scared by licorice attacking it and then getting stuck in the door. So it's probably, I keep getting bugs on my glasses, so it's probably not coming back for a little bit at least. And so my plan was to have this up yesterday because I was going to do the voiceover and then just upload it, and then that did not happen, and it's like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm hoping the snakes I'm hoping the snakes sleep in or something, because I have to go back over there now. But yeah, that was my very interesting story. I hope that you learned something from this study with me, and I will try to make another one next week. And I'll try to make the Ephesians 2 video with Harrison sometime this week. I have a Spanish exam soon, and he has a couple exams soon, so it may not be super soon, but I'm going to try to get it started on. And I hope you have a great day, and I hope this was a little entertaining. Bye.